Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. My name is Colin Moriarty. Today I'm joined by my son, Dustin Furman.
Whoa.
Executive producer of Last Stand Media. I don't often refer to you anymore as my son. I haven't disowned you. It's just, I don't want to have the same introduction for both you and Chris, but since Chris is not here today, he's having technical issues. It's also like 8:15 in the morning in California, but he's having technical issues, probably also delirious. So it's just you and me today. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. I was just thinking the other day, you brought up me being your son, and it made me think, I don't think I acknowledged or celebrated when I was on the show for an entire year, which it's been well over a year now, which is crazy.
That. Yeah, that's
it
crazy.
Doesn't feel like it at all.
No.
It would have been, I remember the specific, it was 150. So we're now at 20? So, yeah, it's been a long time. It doesn't feel like it, but I think since, this is not something that is any new idea to anybody, but since COVID, everyone's time is just, completely screwed up. I wonder if we'll ever go back to a feeling of, at least for me, like a timeline of normalcy at all. But I don't know, maybe that's just also getting older as well. So
yeah, I feel kind of I don't know. You're right, and my life didn't really change during COVID, but the world kind of changed to make everyone kind of live like I live, and it's kind of got a sadder, more disconnected feeling. Mm-hmm. Where everyone seems to be like me now, and people are having a hard time finding interpersonal connection, and I'm feeling that too. The only thing though is that I don't really crave it. Like I don't ever wake up and I'm like, man, I really want to go and see someone today. You know. Anyway, Dustin, it's good to be here with you, my friend, and it's good to be here with all of you out there. Now we're doing this episode on the fly. I actually rescheduled another episode I was supposed to do today because I really don't like doing 2 episodes in a day, because we wanted to talk about the Grand Theft Auto 6 mega leak here, and I put a thread up on Patreon. You're listening to this on Patreon, almost certainly, and so I put up a thread there, and you are able to submit inquiries on that thread, so we have a lot to talk about here. But what I told Dustin, what I wanted to do was to just learn, I don't know what did we do it for where I picked your brain? Something happened and we kind of structured it where I was going to be like, I want to kind of ask you about these things and learn more about it. I was going to kind of structure it that way today as well. I mean, I must admit that I read pretty deeply about this as well, but just to give us a little bit of structure. And so from stem to stern, we'll try to cover what has happened so far from the time we're recording this, which is just before noon on September 19th. So obviously there will be even more updates after this, but we have a statement from Rockstar and all the rest. But Dustin, let's just kick it over to you. And can you explain briefly what has happened over the last day or so? This was somewhat muddled because of NFL Sunday football in America, I feel like. And it happened on a Sunday generally. So I feel like that this kind of is lasting longer, although it's a big deal as well. So tell me what's happened here with Grand Theft Auto 6.
Yeah. So basically, a huge number of video clips of Grand Theft Auto 6 were leaked onto the internet, specifically on a place called GTA Forums, which I went and checked, and this is not like an official Rockstar forum. This is a fan-created forum. And this was specifically from a user named Teapot Tuber Hacker. And basically, they left a note that implied that they were holding up more for ransom, specifically the GTA 5 and 6 source code that he had claimed that he had gotten access to this. And we can talk about what that means and how devastating that could potentially be. And so yeah, all these videos leaked out on the internet. Of course, Take-Two was, I think if this had been on a weekday, would have been even faster. But even by last night, they had already kicked into full overdrive, trying to scrub the internet as much as they can of any clips, footage, whatever. It's also important to know, I should have said this earlier, because I found this out today. The footage is apparently from 2019. So this footage is a few years old at this point. So yeah, the footage is being scrubbed, and there's a lot of interesting stuff that we can get into as far as who the hacker is, because apparently he may have been identified at this point. And it's obviously not a good situation for Rockstar, especially the source code. And now we have a full-blown, very early look at GTA and what it looks like. And it seems like all of the rumors and speculation, not speculation, but the rumors and leaks so far have been true, that this takes place in Vice City. It has a female lead protagonist. So I think that's the basic summary.
All right.
I have notes for more if we want to dive into specific things.
Oh yeah, we're certainly going to. And again, I have inquiries from the audience that'll help us structure it as well. Speaking of the female protagonist, and I don't mean to be inappropriate in any specific way, but Hayden Plymel wrote into us on Patreon, and he said she got that ass. And
definitely.
I just want to get it out of the way. Let's just get it out there. We all noticed it. It's the first thing we all saw. Mm-hmm. And I must admit, I thought it was kind of awesome because it was a little jarring. And I don't mean that in any sexual way. It's like she's kind of a short, stubby Hispanic woman, right? Like with a big ass. Mm-hmm. And that seems realistic, but it's not like you're playing Mirror's Edge. You know what I mean? You're used to playing like beautiful people, right, in the classical sense, or built people, strong people, whatever. It's kind of cool to play a real person, and I dug that.
Right.
But there's no doubt that she's got that ass. So I just wanted to throw that out there real quick, just before we even get any further into it. But let's start here. Nathan Densley wrote in and said, "Let's get it out. Who's watched what and how much, just so we know how in depth each of you has watched the leaks and whatnot." So for me personally, I watched several videos. The first video I saw was of I think her name's Lucia. She was in what looked like a fast food restaurant holding people up, and the people behind the counter kept putting money on the table, and obviously a lot of bubble pop-ups and engine level things running. I mean, it's not a clean video at all. And then I saw a video of someone running around outside, and then I saw a bunch of screenshots. So I got a general feel for it. I didn't get too deep into it. Apparently there were 90 or more videos scraped and lots of screenshots and all the rest. I got the general gist of it. I wasn't really worried about looking at them from a spoilers point of view, because I don't think they really spoiled any. I actually don't think nothing has really been spoiled in any major way, which is why I think that this, in some way, this leak is less substantial than it seems, and we'll get into that. But I also feel like in some sense, I accepted it as real. I wanted to make sure it felt real. It felt real immediately. I was like, yes, this is obviously real. And it was also a little bit of hunting and looking for things that weren't, to your point, being taken down rapidly by copyright strikes on Take Two. If you were hosting any of this stuff, you were dumb. I mean, even when I put up the Sacred Symbols Plus thread on Patreon, Dustin, I said, I'm like, we are not linking to any of this stuff. You can go find it, but if you want to sound off on it, you can do so here. So what was your extent of absorbing this content?
Yeah, so I saw, I think, the exact clip that you mentioned about like the fast food stick up situation. And I think I saw, it's weird because there's like a mix. Like I saw some outdoor ones. I saw some that were clearly in a dev environment with like no environment at all, and just some like boxes to kind of show off animations and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard to put a number on, but I did see extensively like a bunch of the different ones. And I'm kind of in the same case with you, that I wasn't really worried about spoilers, because as much as I like GTA 5, I don't feel like it was any kind of masterpiece of storytelling. And like you said, these clips didn't really have spoilers per se as far as story or anything like that. For me, my primary area of interest is just seeing a game that is clearly deep in development, nowhere near being done, and seeing what that looks like, seeing the code run across the screen and the different pop-ups, and the stick up scene in the in the fast food place or whatever it is. I love that all of the NPCs were just placeholders, like just they look like mannequins and stuff. That's so cool to me, seeing all that. And it's funny because I didn't actually see anyone on, I'm sure there were, but I didn't see anyone saying, man, this doesn't look very good or anything like that. I only saw people complaining about those people because I feel like overall, most people, when they see this, unless you're a complete moron, and I get it, there are tons of those on the internet, you know it's not done. Like, clearly, this isn't done. And a lot of people are just looking for any scraps of information they can and fully know that it's not done. You know, it's weird that I saw a lot of takes that this was extremely damaging. And I think that's true about the source code. And it's also very damaging, I'm sure, to morale. But I feel like all this did was just get people way more interested and excited for this game overall. And I'm not trying to defend the leak or anything like that, but I just don't feel like it was necessarily like people saw this and thought, man, GTA 6 looks bad. I don't want to play that. You know what I mean? It just piqued more interest.
I think you're totally right. I think in some sense the leak made Grand Theft Auto 6 real. I don't think it I don't want to. Let me back up and say I don't think it's neither good nor bad. I'm not even trying to analyze it in this specific statement from that viewpoint. I just think that it makes Grand Theft Auto 6 real. Like, here it is. It's real. Like, they are making Grand Theft Auto 6. Like you said, the footage is years old. They have been making Grand Theft Auto 6. You can see pieces of Red Dead Redemption 2 in Grand Theft Auto 6. It's very interesting from that perspective. And like you said, we are nerds for games more than just a final product. So to see a AAA hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in development, you know, maybe between marketing and development, this game will cost more than $1 billion. I mean, that's well within the realm of possibility, I think. And we're seeing the rigging of it. We're seeing it. And so there is something interesting about that. And this goes, I guess, into something Brian Salazar wrote into us on Patreon about. He said, "Hello to the itty bitty slitty committee. It seems like the general consensus around the leaked footage is that it's a disaster for Rockstar. I don't understand why. All it did was confirm the reports from Jason Schreier, but it's not like any significant plot details have been leaked. Don't get me wrong, it sucks that they won't have their moment to show off the game for the first time, but I don't see why they should have to delay the game like some are suggesting. Maybe I just don't understand the games industry well enough. What are your thoughts?" I was a little confused about what people were talking about when they're like, they're going to delay the game or they're going to have to change everything. And I'm like, well, the source code might have required some changes, and we can talk about that in a little while. And by the way, the source code hasn't been leaked, according to a statement, which I'm going to read in a moment. But I guess I just look at the entire scenario, and I'm like, I don't think this is as bad as it seems. To your point, I don't think the damage is material. I think the only people that think that this is a big deal aesthetically don't understand how game development works. And we'll talk about that in a little while too. But I do want to get out this statement from Rockstar, since they did speak out about it finally. And they said on social media, quote, "We recently suffered a network intrusion in which an unauthorized third party illegally accessed and downloaded confidential information from our systems, including early development footage for the next Grand Theft Auto. At this time, we do not anticipate any disruption to our live game services nor any long-term effect on the development of our ongoing projects. We are extremely disappointed to have any details of our next game shared with you and you all in this way. Our work on the next Grand Theft Auto game will continue as planned, and we will remain as committed as ever to delivering an experience to you, our players, that truly exceeds your expectations. We will update everyone again soon, and of course, we'll properly introduce you to this next game when it is ready. We want to thank everyone for their ongoing support for this situation." So they don't seem to be, I don't want to say they're nonplussed or whatever, but they don't seem to be too upset about it. It doesn't seem like the intrusion caused them any major disrepair. And I think you're right, Dustin, in talking it out, that there is something to be said about, getting the game going, talking, exciting. But what did you think about some of the negative feedback that the game was getting?
Do you mean negative just like that it didn't look good or the frame rate was bad?
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's just ignorance, purely. And I feel like I said, that most things that I saw were not people talking about it looking bad. Obviously, there's going to be people that be like, "Oh, I don't like this. Why is the frame rate so bad? But clearly, this footage is so old, and it's nowhere near final. So I feel like anyone who, you don't even need to know anything about games to know that it's like, yeah, this isn't what it's going to look like. So I don't know. I don't even really feel like there's a lot of validity to those arguments at all. But you mentioned about the delay. Can we talk about that for a second? Or people speculating about a delay for this game.
Sure.
So I find that really interesting, and I can only speak from the perspective I have about what I know about game development, which is very limited because I've never done it before. A lot of the arguments about the game being delayed has to do with the source code and if the source code were to leak. And I think this is worth explaining. I thought of an analogy this morning that kind of lightly explains it, not fully, can't pick it apart too much, but think about how companies have secret recipes. Like Dr. Pepper, I'm pretty sure, has a secret recipe, or in fact, I think all of those companies, you can't just get like the specific ingredients and amounts. So you can't
like no one knows the recipe for Coke.
Right.
You can try to reverse engineer it, but you don't know it.
Right. Source code is kind of like a recipe that if you knew the recipe, then theoretically you could perfectly recreate it and change it and modify it in any way you want. Theoretically, you could go and scientifically break down what the ingredients of Coke are, but it's going to take a very long time and may not end up being 100% accurate. So that's what it has to do with GTA 5 and 6, is that particularly with 5, if the source code were to get out, then hackers would be able to completely break down the game and create any kind of cheat software and sell it. And they would instantly have the upper hand because any kind of countermeasures are all just going to be laid bare in the source code, which is worth pointing out that when you get a game on a disk, it is compiled in a way that you can't just go in and view the inner workings of the game. Sure, on PC, you could go and view like texture files or different settings and stuff like that. But when it comes to the actual code, you can't just go in there and get it. More recently, for example, when it comes to how difficult it is to break down source code, it's not until the last few years that we are starting to see decompiles of like Ocarina of Time be decompiled so it can run natively on different software instead of through an emulator. And just think about how small that is in Nintendo 64 game and how difficult it was in order to decompile and in order to try to get some version of the source code. So something like that would be practical. I mean, I'm guessing theoretically impossible with GTA 5.
Ocarina of Time is 32 megabytes.
Yeah, exactly.
Data, which is so incredible. I mean,
insane.
That is so incredible when you think about it. 32 megabytes. That's just nothing. And they made that whole game, the whole structure of it, everything, the music, the logic of it. So Nico Fargione wrote in about this and he said, "Hey, gentlemen, I know leaking the source code of a game is a monumental problem for studios and publishers, but not much more on the subject. Can you guys elaborate as to why this is such a big deal? Thanks for the amazing content." Dustin just did so very well. I loved your analogy, and especially the idea that people need to understand. And again, I'm not a deep technical person either, but it's just that it's like to the analogy of Coke. You could think you have got it, but you're not going to be able to replicate Coke. Like, you are never going to be able to make a can of Coke the way it's made right now. Even if you might even understand the exact ingredients, but you still can't manufacture it like they manufacture it. You still don't have access to their machines and all. It's very sophisticated. Like, it would be a very hard thing for you to do. And even if you got it out, then they would just sue you and stop you from selling. Like, there's all these things that stop you. But breaking open the source code in that particular analogy, means that the very nature of the way they would fight back is already baked into the code. And so,
right.
and like you said, would be laid to bear. It would be a major problem. Now, when we learn that GTA 5 and GTA 6, their source code is safe. When I heard that, I was like, I don't think so. Like, I don't think that is even available to get anywhere, like where these videos would be. These videos apparently were on a Slack channel or whatever. I totally believe that. The source code for the new game is on Slack? I don't think so. That's locked away in some fucking digital vault that probably no one can touch. But yeah, that would have been a huge problem, and that would have required them to start over. Jeff wrote in and said, the gravity of the situation reminds me of Half-Life 2's leak, which led to Valve practically starting over from scratch. What is the likelihood that Rockstar will need to start development over for GTA 6? That's not going to happen now because the source code's not leaked. I think it's a little dramatic indeed, I just said it, to say that they would have to start over. But you would have to because obviously they have their assets, they have the story, they have everything in the game's going, but they would have to build it all from a new foundation. And that would be huge. Like that kind of thing could potentially, if Rockstar's huge, they could never release a game again, support their entire team and still make money because Grand Theft Auto is just that big. But you can imagine something like this happening to a smaller, even AAA team, even a publisher-backed AAA team, and I would be like, that's over. Like we don't have the money to do this now. This adds $25 million to the cost. So yeah, or whatever that might be, just hypothetically. So I just I think that it's a big deal that didn't happen, and I'm not a technical person to understand the ins and outs of it. But to Dustin's analogy, which I think was very well said, that's how I understand it too, which is basically just, it would make it so that you couldn't make the game secure ever again. Like it would just not be possible to do that. And that's good enough for me to understand the gravity of it. But we were talking about the aesthetic of the game, and Johannes did write in about this on Patreon. He says, "Hello, Slitter Critters. I stay away from social media as much as I can, but a quick scan over the leaks on Twitter made me realize how little people seem to know about what early builds look like. They criticized the poor textures, how bad it looked overall, and that this must be a sign GTA 6 will suck. And I saw that a ton. Do you think this could have a lasting negative impact on the game, and how will we be perceived until we see gameplay trailers published by Rockstar? No. And the reason why I don't think it's going to have a permanent effect is because people will see the trailers and realize that what they saw is not what the game actually looks like. But before I even throw it over to you, Dustin, I want to introduce something Fish Stick said here on Patreon. He says, "Hey chaps, I don't know if I'm in the minority here, but if this game is as good as they are, then I think this leaked footage is actually quite good. Showing improvement on GTA 5's tech and Vice City, very much looking like a modern Miami. It got me excited. Love to the family." I'm with you. When I saw it, I was like, this looks really good.
Yeah.
Like I was looking at the sky. I don't know if I was fixated on it. I was like, wow, that looks like a straight up sky, like a real ass sky. I was just focused on it. Then I was looking at like some weird texture and color decisions and all these things. Does it look fantastic? No. Does it look like a next gen PS5 game? No. But knowing what I was looking at, I was like, this looks pretty good. And I don't know what people expected Grand Theft Auto 6 was going to look like. That's kind of what I was wondering in my mind. I'm like, do you think you're going to get a game that looks like The Last of Us Part 2, but it's an open world or something? Is that what you think Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be? It's not. You're going to get something that looks like Red Dead Redemption 2 a little bit better. And that's perfectly fine for me. And so I don't know if you agree or what you felt about what you were looking at. And you talked a little bit about it, but I'd like you to go into it deeper, Dustin. It's just, I wasn't that dismayed by it. I was like, this looks totally fine. This looks fun. And maybe it's because we're educated enough to know what we're looking at. And I think a lot of people listening to this kind of show are educated enough to know what they're looking at. But it just got me excited and interested to play the game in the coming years. And it also reminded me that we actually went an entire generation without a new Grand Theft Auto game, because that was the biggest surprise to me. Was I was like, Grand Theft Auto 5 actually didn't look that good, in my opinion, when it came out, and that was a PS3 game. So, what do you think about the aesthetic? And do you want to go any deeper into and elaborate on maybe the stylistic choices, what you think of Vice City, etc.?
Yeah, dude, I love the fact that it's going to be in, a version of Florida in Vice City. Like seeing, like you said, the crispy blue sky and the environments. Like you said, it's not perfect by any means. And you have to imagine that there's still so many core graphics systems that will still be implemented into the game, like better lighting and textures and stuff like that. Like clearly it's going to look a lot better. And yeah, I think the other thing too is like, there may be some morons out there that think this game looks bad, but the moment they release a trailer, the moment they release the trailer, when it shows a more finalized look, everyone will forget about that. Everyone will forget. And it's one of those things, too, to remember just that, first of all, this build was from 2019. And think about already that I'm sure they have better development hardware and have implemented new stuff. But think about how good Red Dead Redemption 2 looked on even a base Xbox One. You know, like, clearly this team is capable of creating insanely beautiful games. It's like, I don't know. It's just a weird thing to complain about. But overall, I really like the aesthetic. I was intrigued by, there's a shot that I saw of the main character walking in heels with a dress on. Did you see this clip at all?
I don't think so. No.
And it wasn't anything incredible, but like her dress was moving as she walked, like looked really natural. I think that there's still a lot to come, and you have to imagine they're going to put like ray tracing stuff in this game as well. So overall, 2019 hardware. And I saw some people talking about how maybe this was running on PlayStation dev kits, like maybe a PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 4 Pro. Maybe they had some kind of access to other hardware. Maybe it was running on PC. I don't know. But
yeah,
either
they could be
way,
running it to spec,
Yeah.
On PC.
Right.
So, yeah, it's funny, man. I mean, in the timeline, we were talking about it earlier, in the time warp that we're in, like 2019 is a quaint year, because that's even before the pandemic began. I mean, should that date be accurate? That's the kind of stuff you're looking at. That's how long ago that was what they were working with. And we don't really even precisely know. That's why I was getting annoyed at some of the comments, just because I'm like, don't you understand that these things are built over time? They build the rig, they put everything up, the gray boxes and all of that. And then they start putting textures on everything and opening things up. And it goes into what we were saying, like how early voice acting and writing is done. Like that stuff's done. Like it's in the game. You can hear all of it, and all the boxes are coming up. I'm sure they'll record pickups and everything, but the story's structured. I saw one video of this guy at a pier talking to another guy, getting a quest from him or whatever. It was pretty cool. So I knew what I was looking at. I think most people know. And to the point, it's cool to see it, because you can see that they're building on top of everything and slowly making it more and more alive and giving everything purpose. And it's exciting to think that if that is from 3 years ago, then the game is probably working now. I would assume if that's what they had then I would assume the game is probably content complete, and that if they're aiming for a 2024 PS5 release, that the game is basically playable. I would assume so, but who knows? I mean, it is just it's a fun little thing, but I think that this is way less meaningful in some way than what happened to The Last of Us or Part 2, because The Last of Us Part 2's leaks were of the final game and seemed to be designed to hurt the game's story and spoil it. There's nothing like this here, and I'm thankful that doesn't seem to be in the offing. They're totally knowing now they're not going to leak anything else. I'll tell you that much. And whoever got fished online, which seems how this has all happened. Oh, I can't even imagine what's going to happen to them.
Yeah,
not going to be good.
Can we talk about him for a second, because
Sure.
it's right now it's nothing's 100% confirmed, but so this guy that put out this thing, as I mentioned earlier, or put out all the leaks, basically, I have the screenshot here. He said, "This has gone unexpectedly viral." Are you serious? Unexpectedly viral. Woke up to 3,000 Telegram DMs. If you're an employee of Rockstar Take-Two and are trying to contact me, send me a message containing this number or Telegram, or you can email me at this. I am trying to negotiate a deal, is what he said. And there were some interesting stories floating around that apparently people found a Bitcoin transaction for $100,000, and then the hacker said it wasn't him.
Yeah, I saw that.
Potentially there was someone out there that thought they were buying the source code and had $100,000 stolen from them, which is
that's hysterical.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's hysterical.
So this famous hacking forum apparently has claimed they know who did it. And it's this leader of this group called Lapsus. and he is apparently a 16-year-old boy from the UK. Now, I saw this BBC article about him, and I have to shout out Legacy Killa, who was on Sacred Symbols Plus a while back, has done some really interesting videos compiling a lot of this information, clearly very quickly. But this BBC article I saw from his video, and here's a quote from the article. It says, quote, "Under his online moniker, White or Beach Base, the teenager, who is autistic, is said to be behind the prolific Lapsus hacker crew, who is believed to be based in South America." The way they put that, I was just like, okay, like,
yeah. Who is autistic?
Right. Yeah, that was so weird.
So are we.
Yeah.
Get over it.
So apparently this group, Lapsus, has breached Samsung, Nvidia, Microsoft, Ubisoft. They've done all kinds of stuff. Apparently some of them got arrested. There's some theories about if this individual was arrested, apparently maybe he just got like a slap on the wrist and a month away from the internet, which doesn't sound quite right to me. But apparently after he...
That sounds insane.
Yeah. Dude, there's so much random information that I'm just kind of spitting out what I've seen. I can't confirm any of it. But since he got outed by this hacker forum, he has deleted his Telegram account and he's gone completely dark. So maybe he's a little scared at this point, which probably should be because he's about to be in jail. But it's been interesting seeing Take-Two react to all of this too, because that GTA forum, they like completely had to like shut it down in order to get rid of all the content. The GTA subreddit got shut down. And then like you can look on Twitter and see all these videos that just say a copyright claim from the stakeholder copyright claim. Like they have been at it for many, many hours now, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, it's too late, but I respect. And but the good news for them is you're not going to see that footage anywhere respectable, right?
Right.
But that the Streisand effect is in effect, and what's going to be difficult though is that, and because they'll probably be very, very judicious about checking up on it, is no one will be able to do breakdown videos on YouTube or go in and look at things and try to figure it out. Like they're going to go after I mean, it goes without saying we won't even be using any of the imagery in our thumbnail for this.
Well, like, Colin, there's even a possibility. I saw some reports of people talking about the leak getting taken down.
Yeah, that's not. So, I mean, I will fight that if that's the case.
We're at risk with this video, but
no,
we'll see.
No way. I don't. Well, I mean, they can do that, but I'm fighting that. There's
sure. Yeah, and
there is absolutely no way that they have the right to go after people talking about it. We're not showing it. We're not going to have it in the thumbnail. We're not going to leak to it. But go fuck yourself if you think we're not going to talk about it. We are a news podcast. You know, that's insane. So I believe you. I'm not saying you're wrong, but
yeah,
I confidently go forward with this, knowing that, it's like this is totally newsworthy. We're covering something. It's like saying you can't. Everyone understands. I don't even need to explain what it's like. Were you going to say something before?
I was just going to say, I was trying to figure out. There's one YouTuber I saw a tweet named Guile YT on YouTube said, so Take-Two struck down my video, even though I showed no footage of the leaks in the video, only the forum post. I even blurred out the link to the video. I guess they don't want people even talking about it.
Yeah, that's too bad. I mean, I can see maybe them doing that, but people just talking about it with nothing else like that's not. No, I don't think they would do that. We'll see, I guess. But
yeah.
But I'm confident that we're fine.
Yeah,
that's so weird. I understand their indignation, but that's insane. You can't do that. All right, I want to get into a couple of things here about Rockstar itself, and something that I think I'm a little disappointed in. So I'm going to read a couple of comments here that are interrelated, but I want to say that we got a lot of these comments. Gray Hinson wrote in and said, "Sacred Crew, to what extent is Rockstar at fault for these leaks? Could the leaks be a consequence of Rockstar not showing anything about this game? Could it be because their internal security measures aren't good enough? Just curious to hear your thoughts. Thank you." And then Curtis Edwards wrote in and said, "Evening, boys. It's 11:51 in the morning, Curtis. Would you agree to some extent that the public reaction to how the game looks is endemic of how the games industry has been gaslighting people with fake screenshots and vertical slices for over a decade? So much so that people expect a AAA game development to look like that from the outset? I feel like the media culture of driving hype for SEO has also fed into that. and we now have a public expectation of game development which is somewhat disjointed from reality. Do you think there is a way to come back from this? So thank you guys for writing in, and thank you all, obviously, for writing in. I want to say this. Right? Let me back up even from there. What happened to Rockstar is wrong, and it's illegal, and that, I think, is indisputable.
Mm.
I don't like this particular angle that some have taken that, well, you should have just shown us something. It's like they don't have to do anything. I understand people have expectations. We have expectations. We try to hold publishers and developers' feet to the fire, and we like to analyze their moves and all of that. But the idea, I mean, not to be too crass, but it's like it almost comes off as like, oh, their skirt was too short. That kind of shit. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, they didn't do anything wrong. Them simply existing, making a game to their own parameters, at their own schedule, with their own marketing and their own ideas, like they don't owe us anything. And
I'm
so
shocked.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm shocked to hear about entitled gamers. This has never happened before.
It's like, only if you would have only just acknowledged us and showed us more of the game. It's like, what? I just don't, that to me really, I find bothersome, and wanted to just throw out there. Like, I get it. I get what you guys are saying. Like, should they have shown us something? But first of all, they could have shown us anything they want. That's not going to stop bad actors from doing things like this. And you have to, I leak things, but this is so far beyond the pale of what a leak is, in my opinion. You can't, this is stolen. Also, This isn't stuff that was even, see, that's the other difference, is that this wasn't given to someone and then they're like, all right, you publish this. Like, that was never even claimed. They claim they stole it right from the get-go. Like, they got it from these different sources. So I just don't like this, the victim blaming, as it were. Like, it's kind of weird that people expect that. You should have just protected yourself. You should have done what we wanted you to. It's like, well, dude, that's too far. This is a creative field. You can't compel people to do anything. You can't really compel people to do anything anywhere, in any case. So I don't like that. I get it. And I think there's some interesting things in what Curtis and Gray had to say here about SEO driving, about hype culture, about, we used to have a name for it. What do you remember what screenshots used to be called?
Bullshot, right?
Exactly. And that term came from the magazine and internet era, media era, where it's like we knew we weren't seeing real screenshots. We were seeing bullshots. And there is something to be said about that, but that's not material to what happened. We can talk about their marketing. We can talk about the wisdom of not showing things, of keeping things secret for years, but it doesn't justify this level of leaking. Now, if someone got these videos sent to them, went through them, looked at them, examined them, and described some of them and all that, maybe that's newsworthy. Maybe it's newsworthy to say, like, the game is this or the characters are this. And maybe it's like a gray space that I exist in myself. But this is light years beyond anything I would consider leaking. And I'm, of course, talking about not ill-begotten. That's a whole nother level. I mean, that's like way beyond me. So I just don't like that. And I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't think the right move here is blaming Rockstar. I don't think the right move here is blaming gaming culture. What was gaming culture to blame when PlayStation Network got taken down in 2011? I mean, like, what? We have to just expect that bad actors exist. They need to be dealt with in technical ways, I think, to just stymie them from doing anything. And you certainly can't placate them. I guarantee with Take-Two right now, Dustin, they're not saying, oh man, we should have shown Grand Theft Auto sooner. I guarantee you that they don't give a fuck about that. And their experience shows them that keeping their cards close to their chest has worked out great. Worked out for GTA 5. It worked out for Red Dead 2. I don't know. Just wanted to point that out there. Anything to say about that before we move on?
Yeah, well, I don't know. You probably have questions about this, just so I don't necessarily want to jump ahead. But I do think it introduces an interesting conversation I see going on right now on Twitter about this idea of leaks. And I think you just kind of touched on it, is that I've seen a lot of conversation about all leaks are bad. This is disrespectful to the developers, and no one should even entertain leaks, right? And I was thinking about this a lot because clearly we've leaked things on our show, and not all leaks are created equal. There's different types of leaks. There's leaks that provide like a little bit of information or something to go on, like almost like it's not even like a full layout. It's just like a direction to start thinking about, like BioShock, Antarctica, right? That's just something that you can kind of wrap your head around. And then there's leaks like this, which are just full blown, first, like you said, theft and just exposing everything they possibly can. For example, I think that at least I've seen firsthand, people in the journalism space get screenshots of a game, and then they don't just instantly post those. They'll analyze them, vet them, make sure they're real, and then be able to convey some information about them. But they're not just going to like put that out there. I feel like there's an interesting middle zone for leaks that kind of can be respectful in some ways, but also serving our purpose as people that analyze and present the news at the same time.
Yeah, it's well said. I feel like, I mean, I'm going to talk about another game that is announced, but that we don't know anything about in the coming weeks. I've been working with a source to learn more about it. And that, again, is just like this is so far beyond the pale, I think, in some way.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just don't know what, like, are people working in good faith when they even make comparisons between, let's say, us talking about BioShock being in Antarctica and the leak of 90 videos from a hacked Slack account? It's like, are you kidding me? Yeah. So there's just, everyone's got to keep it on the up and up. But once things become newsworthy, they become newsworthy. They enter the consciousness, and that can't be taken back. And that goes to what Kickstand wrote into us about. He says, games media has an obligation to cover these types of incidents, but should there be introspection on the negative impact they have on Rockstar? This is so unfortunate, and the notoriety is what the hacker wanted more than anything. Whatever damage the hacker did was amplified by the media ruining some of the surprise of what the game would inevitably be for the audience. It cast Rockstar in an unfavorable light, somewhat deservedly, also for allowing a security breach. I don't expect a change from the media, but I'm wondering how it could be better, if that makes sense. This angle I somewhat get, just because there's a hunger for e-fame. There's a hunger for notoriety. I think I even saw someone saying how the person who leaked this stuff was opining how they were already losing like Steam and credit for the leak or whatever. And so that's something that I think is worth analyzing, is obviously the effect on Rockstar as a corporation and Take-Two as a publisher and holding company, but also from the point of view of how the media covers these things. I think that, I would leave it up to the people to tell us, but I feel like this is a responsible way to cover something. We're not telling you where to find it. We're not showing it to you. We're not doing any of those kinds of things, but we can't pretend it didn't happen. Once something springs into life, there it is. I will say this though, Kickstand, and I want to throw it over to you, Dustin, is I'll reiterate that I don't know that this is really going to matter. Like, I don't know that this has any effect on the game. I don't know that this has any real effect on Rockstar. I think it's going to affect the way they function, and I want to talk about that in a moment. I think it's going to affect the people that work there. But do I really, truly believe that a developer in the trenches working on this game is crestfallen today because the game was shown and people that don't know anything are judging it? I don't think so. They know what they have. A lot of them have worked on games like this before. They're at a very high level. Most of them make six figures. They're well compensated. They get huge bonuses for these games. They're fine. I think there is a greater complexity to something in particular I want to get to in a minute, but I want to throw it over to you about this first. About do you feel for Rockstar in some way? I mean, I feel for them in the same way I feel of anyone victimized by a crime, but I don't especially feel like they're injured in a major way.
I think that they are not on, as long as the source code is not leaked. I don't feel like this injures them in any kind of monetary long-term way. I think that, though, where I would push back on you is that I think that this would be a morale hit, a temporary morale hit. Like, if I was working on something for years and years and years, and I had a really awesome version of it that still wasn't ready, and a version from 2 years ago was presented on display for the entire world to see, that would really, really frustrate me and make me upset, like, for sure. So I understand that aspect of it for sure. And I feel bad for the people working on it for that reason. But as far as long term, it's not going to affect the sales of the game at all. In fact, I think it just made people more hyped up for the game. People are excited and clearly want to know everything they possibly can. So I guess I'm somewhere in the middle where it's not going to hurt them, but I do feel bad for them. But like you said, they're going to be fine.
Yeah, I think they'll be totally fine. I mean, I guess you're right. I feel bad for the individuals that are working hard, but I guess I just don't believe that many of them care. I don't know. Don't they have bigger fish to fry? Isn't it I guess I'm being a little bit of a, devil's advocate, but doesn't it just speak to the quality? Like, doesn't it just give you big balls in some way if you're in the trenches? Like, people are so interested in what we're doing. They are fixated on this. Reuters and the AP are covering this. It's being covered on all the major news networks. If this happened to one of my games or whatever, no one would give a shit, right? It would, and I also think it would be more injurious to a studio like ours or a smaller team than a bigger team like them. So in some way, I think that they're smart enough to make it work for them. And I hope that they do that. They're going to need a little time to figure that out, but I bet you they can pull out a few interesting threads and revisit this stuff. See, that's maybe the way I would deal with it ultimately when you're ready to talk about the game, is just put your shoulder into it and do a bunch of dev diaries about that stuff. I think that would be super cool. When the game is getting closer to launch, you go back to that diner in the final game, you show a side-by-side and you show how everything was fixed and what you guys were doing. I think you can spin this into something in the gold that shows how hard it is to make a game like this. And that's why I think it's disappointing that so many ignorant people talk about games, whether on social media or even on podcasts, where they just don't know anything about them. And the one thing I can say is that they're very hard to make. And seeing the seams is not fun in the final product, but seeing the seams now, I think is very worthwhile. But Dustin, I did say that this will affect something that I don't know if people are considering, but David Wilson II considers it. He says, "Hello, Sacred Man. I've seen a few people, including Jason Schreier, mention that this leak was likely to cut out work from home options for people working in games, including contractors. The Last of Us Part 2 seemed to have leaked that stemmed from someone working remotely as well. That's true, as far as I understand. I understand that it's easier to keep a lid on things when everyone is centralized, but do you think this portends an end to remote work for 2K, Rockstar, and or other devs and publishers? Also, where I work, they're really pushing to get those of us working remotely back to the office. Why is this such a push for managers everywhere? Thanks and be well." Well, it's a push from managers everywhere because they need to justify themselves. No one's more amiss right now than middle management. I'll tell you that much. Because their entire walking cubicle to cubicle, sending stupid emails. I had someone like this at IGN, just being annoying, eventually getting fired for being useless. It's like they want you back in the office so that they have something to do, because they definitely don't. But I was thinking about this, Dustin, and I'm glad that David wrote in. What do you think about this idea of, yes, it is true. The two major leaks, The Last of Us Part 2 and now this game, were because of phishing, I think, from because to work on games remotely, you're usually using virtual machines. And so I would imagine there's a lot of links, a lot of things you're clicking on. You click on the wrong thing. Before you know it, you're compromised. And so I feel like this might be a bad thing on a dev-wide level for the industry, because I think some of these guys are being like, oh man, this is the perils of working remotely. Did you consider that when you saw all this?
Yeah, well, I'm curious about it just because if the leak was through Slack, then I don't think working from home would have changed that unless they are only using Slack because people are remote. Because clearly, at a big developer like Rockstar or any other, they need some kind of centralized communication system through text, whether it's email or Slack or Discord or Microsoft Teams, whatever. These are extremely common now. So I wonder if, it wouldn't have mattered, I feel like, if they were using Slack anyway, if the person whose account someone got into was in the office using Slack or at home. But I don't know. It could be. The only other theory I have is that maybe before work from home, people were using an internal network side communication system that never touched the internet. And that way there was no possibility of any kind of leak.
That was kind of something like that is what I was thinking. I mean, again, I'm not a technical person, but I was thinking that it's not Slack per se, but that they probably don't use Slack. You're probably not able to even use the Rockstar Slack if you're not signed in to their network. It's not something you probably log into on your own computer. You know what I mean? Without remotely accessing, because that's what you need to do to share builds and all of that. So I just think that whole workflow being internal. So like you're basically blurring the lines between like a walled network and then the outside computer that you're using at home, and blurring those things together, I think, is how this happened. I think that's the argument. But
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I've heard situations of people already, like the work from home, they use an app called Parsec, which is absolutely amazing app. It's really funny. It started at just for gaming, and I met the guy that owned the company at PAX. I was like, hey, you should really make a work option, because I use it from back when I was a video editor. I would use it so I could work from home. Like, yeah, we're really focused on gaming. Well, then the pandemic hit, and now they've completely pivoted the whole company. But Parsec is a fantastic tool that they probably use, like you said, that way they don't have source code or actual assets on computers from home that would be much more vulnerable. Everything is remoted into from what you would hope is a secure server at whatever their HQ is.
Right. Like if you were remote viewing a computer, like that's the point. Is like if you're so if you're accessing a virtual machine, but you're being remote viewed on your machine, they can still see what you're doing. And that's kind of the thing I think is, yeah. So it's I don't know. I want to follow up on this with two people, actually, are two of our consultants that we work with, in Rick Hogue and Moore's Law is Dead, in terms of the legal and the technical ramifications of this. So that'll be a different episode. So I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. Obviously, we don't know enough. Leave it to the experts. I did want to note that Take-Two released a statement saying we have already taken steps to isolate and contain the incident. Take-Two, of course, is the owner of 2K and the owner of Rockstar Games, 2K being the publisher and Rockstar Games being a developer. And they released just a brief Securities and Exchange Commission Form 8K to announce this information. So I don't think there's anything interesting. I'm just kind of glossing over it. Yeah, it just says Rockstar Games recently experienced a network intrusion in which an unauthorized third party illegally accessed and downloaded confidential information from its systems, including early development footage for the next Grand Theft Auto. Current Rockstar Games services are unaffected. We have already taken steps to isolate and contain this incident. So they did let the Security and Exchange Commission know, since they are a publicly traded company. So is that serious? Finally, I want to go to this inquiry from Josh Naylor, who says, with the abundance of leaks over the past few years, which seem to be getting progressively worse and worse, are the special days of game reveals now a thing of the past? Leaks used to be rare and exciting, now have become a real buzzkill in the community. What do you think about that? I mean, maybe we should even be checking our own leaks. I don't feel I've been a journalist, or I'm not really a journalist anymore, but I was for a long time, and I just feel like that's part of my job. Like I can't getting involved and being like the turnstile as you're going into the subway, where I'm like letting you in and like figuring out who gets in and you're not allowed in and all this. It's like, I don't think that that's really my job. I think I kind of have to report on things as they materialize. I think the important thing is that people that are journalists, people that are writing or covering this stuff, there's just a few rules you have to kind of participate. You can't steal things. You can't get ill-begotten things. You can't ask for stolen things. Like that. These are all obvious But if people are just leaking things to you and your job as a journalist, I don't know that you're really supposed to be the turnstile. Otherwise, you're not really a journalist. And I think that even people that I don't really like personally, like Jason Schreier, I think does what he does. Like, I just think that like material is presented to him or someone what's the guy on GameSpeed, Jeff Grubb, who's been on Defining Duke, our sister podcast. Like, these guys seem to operate on the same level as I do, where it's like you get presented with information, you try to verify it, and then if you can verify it, you present it. That's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about that? Do you think that the special days of game reveals are over, surprises are over, that leakers are ruining things?
Yeah, well, I feel like there is definitely some discretion involved, even from a journalist perspective, and not even, some rogue, right? I feel like if you were presented with the full details of the next BioShock game, when it comes out, what systems, the full synopsis of the story, all the different modes, maybe some weapons or whatever, but you knew, let's say you got it on a Monday and it was the entire blowout was on Friday. Do you leak it? You know what I mean? Like, at that point is like, you might as there's like, if it was 8 months away, it's a bit of a different story. But as it gets close, I feel like from a journalist perspective, it's like, well, you could get the hit, but it would be cheap, and it would just ruin so many people's plans and the things that they've been working on. You know what I mean? So I feel like there is some kind of discretion. Like when Jason Schreier reported on some of the stuff from these leaks, we have no idea how far away Grand Theft Auto 6 is. Years, potentially, still away. So I feel like that's kind of different. So yeah, what do you think about that though? The discretion of maybe it's okay to just not leak something, to just hold it.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of things that I've not leaked. An interesting screenshot was sent to me weeks ago. I was like, I can't believe this. It's like that's not something that there is, I guess, a discretion behind the scenes, but a lot of the discretion for me has to do with journalism, right? The discretion is, am I locked up? Am I sure it's true? That's like the thing that's most important to me. From there, I try to treat every product with the same amount of respect. Like I think are very good on this show about not spoiling games. I'm very serious about that. I think I've told the story about, I had an editor in chief at IGN that used to get mad at me for my video reviews because I would never use footage beyond 90 minutes into the game ever. Like, and if you go back and look at my old video reviews, they never use, like I would go into a bay to capture at IGN and I would capture the game for 60 or 90 minutes and then I'd be out of there. And when I was reviewing Mass Effect 3, the editor in chief was like, well, you got to get more and I'm like, no, man, like no one wants to see that. Like, I'm not spoiling anything. I've always been like that. So if a spoiler of a game, or I'm sorry, if a leak of a game was spoiling the actual story of the game, I don't think I would do it. But that's because I wouldn't do that to a game that exists. So why the fuck would I do that to a game that doesn't exist? So me saying BioShock takes place in Antarctica isn't a spoiler. Me telling you more about what the game's about, which I know, is not part of the reporting. And that's why I didn't do it, because I don't want to ruin it for you. Like, in other words, Dustin, I would just never do that. Even if the game was out, I'm not going to sit here and like, we're still careful about spoilers for like The Last of Us. Like, I won't talk about The Last of Us in specificity on the show. It's a 9-year-old game that exists. So I totally understand what you're saying, but I think we already, at least I think all of us, I think we all practice that discretion already, just to like respect the product. It's not even, and I got to be honest with you, I don't do it out of respect for the product or for the developer. I do it out of respect for the audience. I don't really feel like I have to have anything but an adversarial relationship with developers and publishers, because it's like, well, I cover you, and like as a journalistic kind of thing, like I'm supposed to be poking and prodding at you. You're not really supposed to like me. That's why it's weird that like there's this incestuous thing with media and developers and publishers. Like, you're not supposed to like each other. The entire idea, criticize. That's where, you're not supposed to be friendly. And so I do it more for the audience to be like, I wouldn't want to know this, but I wouldn't want to know anything more about BioShock, so I'm not going to tell you. I wouldn't want to know anything more about. So if there was like a Grand Theft Auto 6 leak and we decided to cover the contents of the story, which I don't think was even part of it. I think they talked a little bit about like this Bonnie and Clyde thing and all this, but which is cool. But that's kind of like spoiling the game. Maybe we would do a Sacred Symbols Plus about it or something, but I just don't think we would do that at all. So I totally think you're right. But I think that discretion has to be aimed towards, like, Take-Two released an SEC statement because their discretion is towards the people that own their stock. They're not talking to us.
Right.
You know? And our stuff is like, well, we're talking to the audience. And other people might not like that. But I've never even, well, that's not true. I've been a party to huge leaks when I was at IGN. Like we've talked about the Destiny leak and stuff like that. And you can go back and look at that leak. I'm not on the byline. I was kind of just in the advisory part of it. It wasn't leaked to me. But you can go back to that and say like, this is too far, you know? And I've never personally had a byline on anything that leaked anything nearly like that. What I like to leak are the existence of things. That's it. I don't think that that's like unique information. And like maybe some details. Yes, there is a BioShock. Yes, it takes place in the Antarctic. Yeah, like that's about as far as that's what I like to do. After that, I'll leave it to everyone else. Like that's where Tom Henderson comes in. That's where like a lot of guys get into the weeds and do a lot of really good work. But it's interesting to think about. And I just can't bring myself to care about the publishers and developers as corporate entities. I care about their creations. I care about the individuals. I care about all the rest. But I don't know. It's like, oh, my marketing strategy is fucked up. My marketing assets. Oh no. Like, I don't give a fuck. You know, like whatever. But I understand if you're at one of these studios and that affects you. I get it. But I don't know. I'd be interested to hear the audience what they think about this. I think this is an influx situation. We'll obviously have Chris on for Sacred Symbols this week. We'll get much deeper into this story. I'm sure there'll be many more things to say. And like I said, I also want to get Hogue and Moore's Law on here as well soon. Maybe I'll try to set that up for later in the week so we can talk about the technical ramifications and the legal ramifications. Maybe we can just stitch those together into one episode. A little peanut butter and jelly for you, huh?
Whoa.
Who's the peanut butter?
Hogue.
Yeah. I would think so. Okay. That's it. That's all we have. We're going to put this episode up right away. So enjoy it. Let us know what you think. And we'll see you for more Sacred Symbols Plus and Sacred Symbols and Defining Duke and Knockback and all the rest. Do you have any closing comments before we go, Dustin?
Closing comments. Shout out to the big booty Latinas.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Shout out.
Shout out.
I loved it. I loved it. Just not from a sexual point of view. I was like, this is unusual.
It's different.
She's not Lara Croft. She's not, some sort of adventurer in Skyrim. She's just like the chick you see down the street. And I think that's neat. So, all right. More Grand Theft Auto 6 coverage as it makes itself available. Until then, see you next time. Goodbye.
See ya.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.